Welcome guys, back again with a RP2 Plus versus video. I hope you enjoyed that little intro as much as I did making it. Just thought I'll get a little bit more creative just for a bit of a laugh. My last video I did was the RP2 Plus versus the anbernic rg353. I had some great support with that, and thanks to you guys who did so. I thought why not now compare it to the more recent release, the anbernic 353p. To help you guys decide if you are on the fence of picking one up yourself or starting to get into the retro gaming emulation dedicated portable scene. There are quite a fair amount of these handhelds out there, and I've been enjoying every one that I've been picking up, each with their own unique benefits. You can also check out those videos in my playlist section if you wish. I have also made dedicated videos on each of these devices that will have more of an overall coverage. Now both of these are hitting around about the same budget, the rg353p hitting around about £30 more than the £100 RP2 Plus. That itself could be a decider for you, but can the rg353p by anbernic finally be a true competitor to the RP2 Plus and take it from the throne of the retro emulation handhelds within around that affordable budget? Well, together let's find out. Before we do, smash on that like and subscribe, helps out a lot and is much appreciated. Of course, if this is your style of content. Now in this video, I'm going to break it into easy digestible sections. First, I will quick through the hardware specs. Then I'll go on to the build quality and design. Then on to the setup and OS usability of both of these handhelds. Then the emulation performance threshold test. Lastly, I'll end it up with some of my own opinions, and of course, I'd love to hear your own in the comment section below. Now on to the hardware specs comparison. We do have the anbernic with a 1.8 quad core, then we have the RP2 Plus with a quad core Tiger T310, the anbernic pushing about 1.8 GHz, then the RP2 Plus pushing around about 2 GHz. But the GPU is being slightly improved with the RP2 Plus, giving you a better compatibility with the harder to push emulation consoles. Both handhelds are packing the same amount of RAM of 2GB, both LPD DDR4, so pretty decent type of RAM for these handhelds. Both are touchscreen with a resolution of 640 by 480 with 3.5 inches on both of these handhelds. They have the same Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connectivity. With the Wi-Fi streaming as well at the same, you'll be able to stream or cast any games from your PC or even PlayStation 5 on these handhelds pretty smoothly. And the battery is slightly better with the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus pushing 4000 mAh with the anbernic having 3500 mAh. So there's not a big difference with the battery life with any of these units, so it's not really any benefits with battery life. And I managed to get around about 3 to 4.5 hours of gameplay depending on how demanding the games that you play. When it comes to the storage, it gets even more interesting. Both of them have a 32GB built-in memory, plenty of room for cartridge-based ROMs, but not so much I would say for Android-based games. The RP2 Plus has one SD card slot, where I've heard people even running a 256GB or even a 512GB size SD on it. I'm personally happy with my 128GB at the moment, no problems with that so far, but anbernic have two SD card slots. One is for the operations system and the other one then can be used for storage. When the left hand side one is removed before turning on, it will then boot into Android version 11. Unfortunately, the then available SD slot cannot be used as storage, but there is no stopping them or even the modern community into updating this to that become available. On paper, the RP2 Plus is winning with a slight better CPU and GPU, but feature wise the anbernic is slightly winning. Now let's move on to the build quality and design of the handhelds, just of course my own opinion. Now the first thing you will notice is the size of these devices, the anbernic being ever so slightly a little bit bigger, nothing too drastic at all. If you put it on top of it, just the corners seem to poke out. Now when it comes to the casing quality, I've always struggled with the Retroid Pocket, as I've stated in previous videos, especially with the black model anyway. This is the only one I've managed to get my hands on. It always seems to pick up the sweat and the grime, and it always seems to be cleaning it, unlike the anbernic, which seems to retain its quality. When it comes to button layouts of these handhelds, I've always preferred the retroid pocket because of the analog stick at the top. That's something personally more of a favourite of mine, is it's really close to the triggers, making it more easily accessible. But the quality of these analog sticks do not really keep up with the anbernic. As you can see, I've had this for about a year, so it's got some wear and tear, kind of worn down on the corner there. And this other right stick just easily comes off. So I've lost a couple of these already, and this A stick is just rendered useless, as I stated before. When it comes to the button layouts, when it comes to the functions anyway, you got the home buttons and select buttons at the bottom, but I do prefer the layout on the anbernic as it's just more easier to access. The front facing speakers on the retroid pocket does make sense, and I thought it would be better quality than the anbernic, but it turns out they're almost decidedly the same, and there's never really been a problem with them facing down. When it comes to the button quality with the D-pad, I prefer the anbernic as it's slightly easier to press with less travel. If you can see now on the camera, you get a good angle now and how deep the D-pad is. It's just quicker to indicate input. Now this is a first for anbernic to have back triggers, which is a great feature, something I was looking forward to. And they are pretty easy to access, especially from the analog stick as well. There's not much of a reach. And the buttons overall, they're easier to trigger than the retroid pocket. So personally, I do prefer how the buttons feel on the anbernic. The anbernic is very comfortable in the hands as well, even though it's slightly bigger than I find on the retroid pocket. I get more of a handache really with the retroid pocket. When it comes to other layouts, we do have the jack at the bottom of each handheld, so that's really nice placement. And then at the top it's almost the same. You've got two separate OTG and the DC USB-C charger with a better higher quality HDMI connector. You do have a mini with the anbernic and then a micro with the retroid pocket. So I do find this a better quality connector to use. You do get some screw protectors at the back of the retroid pocket, so if it does get wet, they are protected. So it's one little bonus, but also with the anbernic, it's just easier to access if you ever want to open this out. Another little nice feature is that the SD card is covered by a protector, where the anbernic is left open. No protectors for the SD cards there. At the back you do find some grip pads on the anbernic. First of all, you may be thinking, is there any point in these? It does apply a little bit more comfort, and then when you place this down, it's less likely to be moved and pushed off the surface. This is a bit slidier. So when it comes to layout, I have preferred the retroid pocket, but overall the design and how comfortable this anbernic is with that easier to press buttons, I think this is overall the winner. On to boot up speed comparison, it is very different between the two, with the rg353p making it just over 30 seconds to get up and running. In the Linux side, it is just about roughly the same time on booting up into Android. The rp2 Plus is taking just slightly under a minute. Onto the screen comparison, I would say when it comes to the colours, the rg353p does pack out a little bit more punch. But then the retroid pocket 2 does have a better balance with the whites and blacks, giving it a better tone. You may be able to see it in this footage. But both of these handhelds do look really nice, no game-changing differences between these two. They both have very good high quality screens with great viewing angles. Onto OS and functionality, the rp2 Plus has its own launcher within Android, which is a huge plus for these handhelds, and of course you can just add your own launchers if you decide to do so, that I've stated in other previous videos. With the updates as well, it does do a really nice job, but I do find using Dig does have a better results with finding game art. The retroid pocket does require additional setting up to get things up and running, and for some people that can be found quite tedious. But when things are up and running, it is very good. The rg353p, on the other hand, does have an alternative OS with Linux, running Emulation Station with retroid and standalone emulators on the side. The results are pretty great. It of course does come bundled with SD cards with ROMs all built in, and it's already set up for you to get things going straight from the start. But booting straight into this OS is a great convenience with an awesome layout and some customization extras that the Android version just doesn't have. It's very simple to add and set up your own games as well, runs smoother with video transitions running like butter, comparing to the Android front launchers. With the Anbernic, the Android side of things is very basic, no Play Store or custom launcher and no assurance of any updates from first parties. A bit of a letdown really, but does give you enough to get things up and running. Conclusion, Android side of things on the retroid pocket is a lot better than the rg353p. But the Anbernic giving you that option to run a Linux based OS as well, which I found a better front end, and those Linux ports that are just not featuring on Android is what really takes it for me. For the main tester now in this versus a battle video, the emulation performance threshold between both of these handhelds. Of course, 2D base generation consoles and arcades do run really well on both of these systems, and they well should do. The one main interest I'm in for these handhelds is how far we can push PlayStation 1 games with any higher resolution, and how steady is N64, Dreamcast and PSP emulation. PS2 and GameCube is just not quite there for both of these handhelds. Overall, the rg353p plays PS1 games great, but when it comes to using DuckStation app to get those extra features like ×2 resolution and other enhancements, it does take a toll. There was only a handful of titles that worked pretty flawless on ×2 resolution with no dips. But the main strain test I like to use is using the game Vagrant Story. Still no port of that on any later consoles. What gives? As you can see, the game does dip down to about 40 frames per second from time to time. Sometimes it does run a solid 60, but those dips are pretty heavy. The rp2 Plus, on the other hand, can have a steady FPS throughout the experience, but when pushing it to ×3 resolution, that's where we get some dips. So now this is where you can see the benefits of the CPU and GPU on the rp2 Plus. N64 emulation is a bit difficult with the Anbernic handheld, as different results you get by using emulators on the Android OS or even on the Linux OS. The one I'm using is the latest OS of Gelos, which has been recommended by the handheld community, as Gelos handles the harder to emulate consoles a little bit better than the standard OS that it came with. Most of the titles I tried did struggle to get over 45 FPS and really did stay at 60. Though there were a handful of titles that did run really well on the Anbernic handheld, the rp2 Plus N64 compatibility is definitely a lot higher and is more of a recommended handheld to get N64 up and running. The same experience I had was emulating Dreamcast, and surprisingly titles did run a little bit better on the Linux OS, but some titles just won't even boot up. PSP, on the other hand, you do get better results with the Anbernic handheld. A few dips here and there on standard resolution, but titles I tested were very playable. With the rp2 Plus, you do get even better compatibility, and those less demanding titles, you can run them at ×2 resolution. All in all, emulation side of things, the rp2 Plus is definitely the winner. Now for the end and conclusion of this video, which one is the winner and takes the title between both of these pretty nice tasty handhelds? Well, of course, this is just my opinion, and I still love to hear from you guys in the comment section below, but it has to be the rg353p, even though it does struggle with the higher end emulation, and I have been a big supporter of the rp2 and Plus for a long time. The Anbernic does take the lead. With this better quality buttons and HDMI out connectivity, bigger triggers and a more comfortable hold in your hand, and practically just giving us the same features with this Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, but with that extra option of giving us Linux as an alternative OS. Well, as always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you want to support my channel, click subscribe, leave your comments below, and I'll catch you lot on my next video.